This is a calm, Western bedtime sleep story, told slowly and gently for relaxation and deep rest. Tonight's story takes you to a quiet frontier town at the edge of the desert, where a single lantern still glows, and the night rests in peaceful silence. This Western sleep story is designed to help you unwind, slow your breathing, and drift gently toward sleep. Find a comfortable place, settle in, and let the calm of the night surround you in this bedtime tale. The last light is not a warning, but a soft, steady comfort in the dark. When you're ready, take a slow breath in and let the story begin. The town appeared out of the dust like a memory half forgotten. Samuel Chen had been riding since dawn, following the old freight road west, and he'd almost missed it, just a cluster of weathered buildings huddled against the base of red sandstone cliffs, fading into the landscape like they were trying to disappear. Redemption, the faded sign read. Population for 3. Though Samuel suspected that number was optimistic, probably written years ago, before whatever had happened here happened, before people started leaving. Before the town began its slow return to desert, his horse, a grey gelding named Ash, walked down the single main street without guidance. Empty buildings on either side, general store with broken windows, a saloon with its doors hanging crooked, a church with half its roof caved in. The kind of town the railroad had passed by, that the mines had played out, that the future had forgotten. Samuel was 63 years old, and he'd seen plenty of dying towns, had lived in a few, had watched them wither. This one was further gone than most, not quite a ghost town yet, but close. Maybe 1 or 2 people still hanging on, too stubborn or too poor to leave. The sun was dropping toward the western horizon, painting everything in amber light. Long shadows stretched across the dusty street. A tumbleweed rolled past, caught against a hitching post, then broke free and continued its journey. The wind made a hollow sound through the empty buildings, like someone breathing through a broken flute. Ash's hooves were loud on the packed earth. Clip, clop, clip, clop. The only sound besides wind. No voices, no dogs barking, no wagons creaking, just silence and abandonment and the particular loneliness of places people used to care about. Samuel had been a merchant once, had run a dry goods store in Sacramento for 20 years. His wife Ellen had handled the accounts while he dealt with suppliers and customers. They'd been good partners in business and in life, had raised 3 daughters who'd grown into fine women, had built something solid and respectable. Then Ellen had died pneumonia 5 years ago, and the solidity had collapsed. The store felt empty without her. The house felt empty. His life felt empty. The daughters had their own families, their own lives. They'd offered to let him come stay with them, but he'd declined. Didn't want to be a burden. Didn't want to be the sad widower everyone felt sorry for, so he'd sold the store, sold the house, bought a horse and some basic gear, and started traveling. No plan, no destination, just motion, trying to outrun grief, or maybe trying to sit with it until it became bearable. Hard to say which. That had been 8 months ago. He'd wandered through Nevada and Arizona, had worked odd jobs when he needed money, had slept under stars and in cheap hotels and once in a barn with a family of raccoons, had slowly learned to be alone without drowning in loneliness. But sometimes, in quiet moments, the grief still ambushed him, would hit him like a physical blow-in's absence, suddenly, crushingly real. Her laugh that he'd never hear again, her hand that would never hold his, the way she'd said his name, Samuel, with that particular emphasis on the second syllable that made it sound like music. He pulled Ash to a stop in front of what had been a boarding house 2 stories. Painted yellow once, though most of the paint had peeled away. The porch sagged but looked structurally sound. The door hung open. Samuel dismounted, his knees protesting. He was too old for this, probably. Too old to be wandering around like some young drifter. Should be settled somewhere, rocking on a porch, telling stories to grandchildren. But here he was, and here was redemption, empty and waiting. He led Ash around to the back of the building, found an old stable. The roof was intact, the stalls still had some hay. Good enough. He unsaddled the gelding, rubbed him down, made sure he had water from his canteen. Ash immediately started on the hay. Content. Samuel stood there a moment, listening. Still nothing, just wind, just the creaking of old wood settling. He walked back round to the front, climbed the steps to the porch. They held his weight, barely. The door led into what had been a lobby, dusty furniture, a desk with an ancient ledger still open on it. He flipped through a few pages. Last entry was dated April 12th, 1891, 4 years ago. Upstairs he found rooms, most still furnished. Beds with moth-eaten blankets, dressers with drawers hanging open, a child's toy horse lying on its side by a window. Signs of hasty departure, or maybe just gradual abandonment. People taking what they could carry, leaving the rest to time and dust. He chose a room at the front, overlooking the main street. The bed was questionable, but the floor looked solid. He'd sleep on the floor with his bed, had slept in worse places. From the window he could see the whole town spread below him, the empty buildings, the broken boardwalks, the well in the town square, with its bucket hanging motionless. A place that had been alive once, had held people's hopes and dreams and ordinary daily lives. Now just a shell, a monument to impermanence. The sun touched the horizon, began its final descent. Samuel watched, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. Ellen had loved sunsets, would stop whatever she was doing to watch them, would stand at their bedroom window and just look. Never the same twice, she'd say. That's what makes them precious. He'd teased her about it sometimes. It's just the sun going down, Ellen. Happens every day. That's my point, she'd reply. Every day. And every day it's different. Every day it's beautiful. How can you not stop and look? She'd been right, of course. She'd been right about most things. The sun dropped lower. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep purple. Shadows filled the street below, pooling like dark water. The wind died down to nothing. Perfect stillness. And then, just as the last sliver of sun disappeared, Samuel saw it alight. A single lamp being lit in a building down the street. The old saloon, he thought, though it was hard to tell from this distance. So, he wasn't alone, after all. Someone else was here, still holding on to this dying town. He felt simultaneously relieved and disappointed. Relieved because humans were social creatures, needed at least the possibility of connection. Disappointed because part of him had wanted the solitude, the complete aloneness of a place abandoned by everyone. But there it was, a light in the darkness. Someone else's stubborn refusal to let go. Samuel unpacked his bedroll, laid it on the floor, pulled out his remaining food, some hardtack, some dried apples, a small piece of cheese that was getting hard at the edges. Not much, but enough for tonight. Tomorrow he'd need to move on, Find a real town with supplies, or maybe go see who'd lit that lamp. Maybe they had food to spare, information about the nearest settlement. Maybe just a conversation, some human contact after days of silence. He ate slowly, chewing thoroughly. The hardtack was tough, the apples were leathery, the cheese was sharp. Simple food, unexciting food, but it filled the emptiness in his stomach, if not the emptiness elsewhere. Through the window, the town was almost completely dark now. Just that one lamp burning steady in the saloon, like a lighthouse, like a signal, like someone saying, "I'm here, I exist, I haven't given up yet." Samuel knew that feeling. The determination to keep going even when everything said to stop. To maintain routines even when routines seemed pointless. To light a lamp against the darkness even when the darkness was overwhelming. He'd been doing that himself. Getting up each morning, making coffee, saddling ash, riding. Simple actions, meaningless in themselves, but together they added up to something. To continued existence. To not surrendering. Ellen would have understood. Ellen always understood. He finished eating, field stripped the wrappers, put them in his pocket, walked to the window, looked out at the town. The lamp still burned. Whoever was down there was settling in for the night, same as him, two strangers in a dying town, both refusing to be ghosts just yet. The stars were emerging. First the bright ones, Venus, Sirius, Arcturus, then more and more, until the sky was thick with them. No moon tonight. Just stars and darkness and that single lamp below. Samuel had always found comfort in stars. Their constancy, their indifference, their vast distances. They'd been there before him, would be there after him, would witness the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of worlds, and would continue burning regardless. Ellen used to say they made her feel small. Not in a bad way, in a peaceful way. All my worries, all my problems, she'd say, they're so tiny compared to all that. Makes them easier to bear. She'd been wise. Wiser than him, certainly. He'd been the practical one, the businessman, focused on ledgers and inventory and profit margins. She'd been the philosopher, the dreamer, the one who saw beyond the immediate to the eternal. He missed her practical wisdom as much as her company, missed having someone to talk things through with, someone who'd listen without judgment, offer perspective without telling him what to do. A coyote called from somewhere in the hills behind town. That rising yip howl that sounded mournful if you were in a mournful mood, joyful if you were joyful. Samuel wasn't sure which mood he was in. Both, maybe, neither. Just here, existing, getting through another day. He pulled off his boots, set them by the bedroll. His feet ached, they'd been aching more lately, the miles accumulating in his joints and bones. He was getting old. Not old, not yet, but definitely not young. The body reminding him that time was passing, that he couldn't wander forever, that eventually he'd need to stop somewhere and let himself age in place. But not yet. Not quite yet. He lay down on the bedroll, pulled his blanket over himself. The floor was hard, but he'd slept on worse. The building creaked around him, would contracting as the temperature dropped. Old buildings had their own language, their own way of settling into night. Through the window he could still see that lamp burning, steady, constant, a small defiance against entropy. Samuel closed his eyes, opened them. The lamp was still there. He thought about going down there, introducing himself, but his body was tired and the bed floor technically, was comfortable enough. And there was something peaceful about being alone in this empty building, knowing someone else was nearby but not having to interact. Tomorrow, maybe. Tomorrow he'd go introduce himself, find out who else was stubborn enough to stay in redemption. Sleep came slowly, fitfully. Samuel drifted in and out of consciousness, never quite sure if he was awake or dreaming. The building made sounds, creaks and groans and small settling noises that might have been unsettling in a different mood, but tonight felt almost companionable, like the house was breathing, living, keeping him company. He thought about his daughters. Mary, the oldest, had married a banker in San Francisco, had 3 children, a beautiful house, a life of comfort and respectability. Sarah, the middle daughter, had married a doctor, moved to Portland, had 2 boys. And Rebecca, the youngest, had surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, moving to a small town in Wyoming, marrying another teacher. No children yet, but they seemed happy. All of them had written to him, trying to stay connected even though he'd deliberately made it difficult. Sent letters to general delivery addresses, never staying anywhere long enough to receive replies. It wasn't that he didn't love them, he did, desperately. But he couldn't be around them yet. Couldn't sit at their dinner tables and pretend to be fine when Ellen's absence felt like an open wound. They'd understand eventually, or they wouldn't. He wasn't sure it mattered. What mattered was that they were happy, healthy, living their lives. He'd done his job as a father, had raised them, educated them, launched them into the world. What he did with the rest of his own life was his business, even if what he did was wander aimlessly through dying towns, sleeping on floors, eating hardtack and dried apples. He must have slept because suddenly he was dreaming. Ellen was there, young again, maybe 30. They were in the store early morning before opening. She was checking inventory, calling out numbers while he wrote them down. The familiar ritual of their shared work. 12 bolts of calico, she said. 12, he repeated, writing. 8 tins of peaches. 8. One husband who doesn't tell me he loves me often enough. He looked up. She was smiling, that particular smile that meant she was teasing but also serious. One husband who loves you more than anything, he said. Well then, write it down, make it official. And he did, in the dream. Wrote it in the ledger. Samuel Chen loves Ellen Chen more than anything in the world. She came over, looked at what he'd written, kissed the top of his head. Good, now I have it in writing. You can't take it back. Never wanted to, he said. The dream shifted. They were older now, in their house. She was sick, lying in bed, her face pale but her eyes still bright. He was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Promise me something, she said. Anything. Don't stop living when I'm gone. Don't turn into one of those widowers who just stops. I won't, he'd said. A lie, though he hadn't known it at the time. Samuel, look at me, he looked. Living isn't the same as existing. Moving around isn't the same as moving forward. Promise me you'll really live. I promise. She'd smiled, squeezed his hand weakly. Liar, but I love you anyway. 3 days later, she was gone. Samuel woke with tears on his face. The room was dark except for starlight through the window. The lamp in the saloon had gone out, or he couldn't see it from this angle. He lay there, letting the tears come, not fighting them. Grief was like that. Came in waves. All you could do was let it wash over you and wait for it to recede. After a while, 5 minutes, an hour, impossible to tell, he sat up. His back hurt, his neck was stiff. The floor hadn't gotten any softer while he slept. He walked to the window. The town below was completely dark now, invisible except for the vague shapes of buildings against the slightly lighter sky. No lights anywhere. Whoever had been in the saloon had gone to bed or left, or maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. But no, there, just visible, was the faint glow of a dying fire through one of the saloon's windows. Embers, probably. Someone banking a fire for the night, so. Still not alone. Still another human being in this place. Maintaining the small rituals that kept darkness at bay, Samuel felt a kinship with whoever it was. Two people in an empty town, both refusing to disappear just yet. He went back to his bedroll, lay down, pulled the blanket up. Sleep was gone now, chased away by the dream and the tears and the memories. He'd be awake until dawn, probably. That was okay. He'd learned to be comfortable with sleeplessness, with long hours of darkness and thinking. He thought about Ellen's words. Living isn't the same as existing. Was he living, or just existing? Moving through days without purpose, without connection, without anything resembling a life. Just motion for the sake of motion, distance for the sake of distance. He didn't know, couldn't tell the difference anymore. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe motion was enough. Maybe surviving grief was about just getting through it, however you could, and on the other side you'd find some version of life again, or maybe not. Maybe some losses were too great, changed you too fundamentally. Maybe he'd never find his way back to real living. Maybe this wandering, alone, sleeping in abandoned buildings, was all he had left. The thought didn't frighten him, just made him tired. So tired, a mouse scurried across the floor. He heard it more than saw it. Then another sound, quieter, like footsteps, but not quite. Like someone walking through the building, exploring. Then silence. Old buildings made sounds. He knew that. Didn't mean anything, but he listened anyway, straining to hear. Nothing. Just the wind outside, the creak of settling wood. His own breathing. He thought about his parents. They'd emigrated from Guangdong province in the 1830s, part of the first wave of Chinese immigrants to California. Had worked on the railroads, in mines, wherever they could find employment. Had faced discrimination and violence and laws designed to keep them powerless. But they'd persevered. Had built a life through sheer stubborn determination. His father had opened a laundry in Sacramento. His mother had worked beside him, washing and pressing and mending. They'd saved every penny, had eventually bought the building, had sent Samuel to school despite the expense. Had wanted him to have opportunities they'd never had, and he'd taken those opportunities. Had learned English fluently, had learned mathematics and bookkeeping, had apprenticed with a merchant who saw past his race to his abilities, had eventually opened his own store, had married Ellen White woman, which had raised eyebrows and worse had built something solid. His parents had died proud of him, had lived to see their grandchildren, had held Mary as a baby, had known their sacrifice had meant something. Samuel wondered what they'd think of him now, wandering aimlessly, abandoning everything they'd worked for, giving up. Would they be disappointed? Or would they understand that grief didn't follow rules, didn't respect expectations, just was? He'd never know. They were gone, Ellen was gone, and he was here in this empty town, asking questions with no answers. The night deepened. The stars wheeled slowly overhead. Samuel lay there, not sleeping, not quite awake, just existing in that liminal space between states. He thought about redemption, wondered what had happened here, why people had left. Probably the usual reasons: economy collapsed, mines played out, railroad went somewhere else. Or maybe something more: dramatic disease, violence, catastrophe. The town bore no obvious signs of trauma, just slow decline. But you never knew. Every abandoned place had a story. Multiple stories, really. All the people who'd lived here, worked here, loved and fought and hoped and died here. All those stories ending or continuing elsewhere, leaving this place empty but not empty. Full of echoes, full of ghosts. Not literal ghosts. Samuel didn't believe in those. But memory ghosts. The residue of lives lived, imprinted on wood and stone and dust. Ellen would have liked that thought. Would have said something about how we're all ghosts in the making, leaving traces of ourselves wherever we go. Would have turned it into something poetic, meaningful. He missed her mind as much as her body. Missed talking with her, hearing her perspective, being challenged and comforted and understood all at once. A sound from downstairs. Definite this time, not wind, not settling. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Coming up the stairs, Samuel's hand went to the pistol beside his bedroll. Old habit from younger days. He wasn't afraid, exactly just cautious. Whoever was in the saloon had apparently decided to investigate the boarding house. The footsteps reached the landing, paused, then continued down the hall, stopping at each door. Checking the rooms, probably. Looking for what? Another person. Supplies, just exploring. The steps stopped outside his door. A long pause. Then a soft knock. "I know you're in there," a voice said. Woman's voice, older, rough from disuse. "Saw you come in this evening. Figured I'd give you the night before introducing myself. But since we're both awake." They stood there a moment in awkward silence. Then Lily said, "You want some tea? I've got a pot going downstairs. Can't sleep worth a damn these days. Might as well be social about it." Samuel considered. He was tired, wanted to be alone. But he was also curious, and she seemed harmless, and it had been days since he'd had a real conversation. "Tea sounds good," he said. He followed her downstairs, through the lobby, out into the street. The night air was cold, made him wish he'd grabbed his jacket. But it was only a short walk to the saloon inside. The fire was indeed still going, banked low but providing warmth and light. The saloon was cleaner than he'd expected: swept floors, bottles lined up neatly behind the bar, chairs stacked on tables. Lily's doing, obviously. Maintaining standards even in abandonment. She poured tea from a pot that had been warming by the fire. Passed him a cup. The tea was strong and bitter, probably brewed hours ago and reheated multiple times. But it was hot and wet, and he was grateful for it. They sat at a table near the fire. Lily studied him with sharp eyes that probably missed nothing. "So," she said, "what brings you to redemption? We're not exactly on the way to anywhere. I'm not going anywhere in particular. Just traveling, running from something, or to something." Direct question. He appreciated that. "From my guess, though I don't think you can actually outrun grief. Your wife?" She saw his expression. It's always a wife or a husband, or a child, God forbid. Nobody wanders into dying towns unless they're trying to escape something, and it's usually loss. Samuel sipped his tea. 5 years ago, pneumonia. Very quick. I'm sorry." And she sounded like she meant it. I lost my husband in '87. Mining accident. We owned this place together. After he died, people kept saying I should sell, move somewhere else, start over. But where was I gonna go? This is home. Even when everyone else left, this was still home. You're the only one left. Me and old Tom Peterson, but he's 93 and mostly blind. Lives in a cabin up the canyon. Comes down once a week for supplies. Otherwise, it's just me. Why stay? She shrugged. Where else would I go? I'm 71 years old. Too old to start over somewhere new. Here, at least I know every stone and board. Here I have memories. Good ones, mostly. George and I had 32 happy years. You don't walk away from that lightly. Samuel understood. Not agreeing, exactly, but understanding. Some people needed their ghosts close. Needed the physical spaces where their loved ones had existed. Others, like him, needed distance. Needed to not be constantly reminded. How long you planning to stay? Lily asked. Just tonight. I'll move on tomorrow. Heading where? West, I think. Or north. Haven't decided. She nodded, didn't press. Just sipped her tea, stared into the fire. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind picked up again, made the old building creak. Finally, Lily said, You know what the hardest part is? Not the missing them, that's awful, but you expect that. It's the forgetting. Little things, mostly. I can't remember George's exact voice anymore. Can't remember what his hands felt like. Can't remember 100 small details that used to be as familiar as breathing. And every time I realize I've forgotten something else, it's like losing him again. Samuel felt his throat tighten. Yes, exactly that. Ellen, you said her name was? Yes, Ellen. Tell me something about her. Something specific, Samuel thought. She used to hum when she was working. Not any particular song, just random tunes she'd make up. Drove me crazy sometimes, but now I'd give anything to hear it again. Lily smiled. George whistled. Same thing, no real melody, just noise. I used to tell him to quit it. Now my own silence is deafening. They sat with that for a moment. Two lonely people in an empty town, sharing the particular pain of surviving the people they'd loved most. You think it gets easier? Samuel asked. Yes and no. The sharp edges wear down. You learn to carry it, but it never stops hurting, not really. You just get used to the hurt. Make room for it. Let it become part of you instead of fighting it. I don't know if I can do that. You're doing it already. Just by being here, by still breathing, by drinking bad tea with a stranger. That's carrying it. That's surviving. Samuel wasn't sure he agreed, but he didn't argue. Just drank his tea, felt its warmth spread through his chest. Lily stood, walked to the bar, returned with a bottle and 2 glasses. Whiskey. I know it's late, but seems like that kind of night. Why not? She poured generous measures. They touched glasses, no toast, just acknowledgement, and drank. The whiskey was rough, but good, burned going down, settled warm in his stomach. You know, Lily said, when everyone started leaving, I thought about going too. Had a sister in Denver who said I could come stay with her. But then I thought, what would I do there? Be the old widow living in her sister's spare room. Watch other people's lives. No thank you. Rather be here, with my memories and my empty saloon and my dignity intact. No regrets. Oh, plenty of regrets. But not about staying. This is where I belong. Even if that means I'll probably die here, alone, and nobody will find me for weeks. That's dark. That's realistic. But you know what? I'm okay with it. We all die. Might as well die in a place you love, surrounded by ghosts you chose. Samuel thought about that. Dying alone in a place you loved versus dying surrounded by people in a place that felt foreign. Which was better? Hard to say. They drank in silence for a while. The fire burned lower. The night deepened. Outside, a coyote called again, joined by another, then a whole chorus. Their voices rose and fell, wild and mournful and strangely beautiful. I miss that sound, Samuel said. Living in cities, you forget what wild things sound like. One of the few benefits of abandonment. The wild comes back. I've seen deer walking down Main Street. A mountain lion drinking from the well. The land reclaiming what we took from it. You sound almost happy about that. Maybe I am. We thought we owned this place, but we were just borrowing it, temporarily. Now it's going back to what it was before. There's something right about that. Samuel considered this. The impermanence of human endeavor. The temporary nature of all we built and claimed and thought permanent. In 100 years, redemption would be indistinguishable from the desert around it. Swallowed, digested, returned to sand and stone, and that was fine. Maybe even good. Everything had its season, its time. Trying to hold on forever was hubris. Ellen would have liked Lily, he thought. Would have appreciated her directness, her acceptance, her refusal to pretend things were other than they were. Tell me about Ellen, Lily said suddenly. If you want to. Sometimes talking helps. Samuel hesitated. He'd been so careful not to talk about her, afraid that speaking her name would break something inside him. But sitting here in this empty saloon with this strange, wise old woman, maybe it was okay. Maybe breaking was okay. She was. Practical, he started. Ran our store like a general runs an army. Everything organized, efficient, no wasted motion. But she was also kind. Would extend credit to families who couldn't pay. Would set aside the best produce for customers she knew were struggling. Lost us money sometimes, but she said money wasn't everything. Sounds like a good woman, the best. We had 38 years together. 3 daughters. Built a life, and then she got sick. Pneumonia, like I said. Went from healthy to dying in 10 days. Doctor couldn't do anything. I sat with her, held her hand, and she just left. 1 minute she was there, the next she was gone. His voice broke. He cleared his throat, took another drink of whiskey. Lily reached across the table, put her hand on his. Her skin was papery, warm. It's okay to break, she said. I break every day. Multiple times, but I wake up the next morning and I'm still here, still whole enough to make tea and sweep the floor and sit with the occasional stranger. Breaking isn't the end. It's just part of the process. Samuel felt tears running down his face. Didn't try to stop them. Just let them come, let himself break a little. Let Lily witness it without judgment. After a while, minutes, hours, who knew he got himself under control. Wiped his face with his sleeve. Sorry. Don't be. Grief is honest. It's the pretending to be fine that's exhausting. They finished the whiskey. Lily poured more tea. The fire burned down to coals. The night continued its slow progression toward dawn. "You should stay a few days," Lily said. "Rest your horse. Rest yourself. No charge for the room, not like I have other customers. I don't want to impose. You're not. Honestly, it'd be nice to have company. Tom's not much of a conversationalist these days, and talking to myself gets old." Samuel thought about it. He'd been planning to move on, keep going, maintain his forward momentum. But what was he running to, or from? What would change if he stayed here for a day or two? Nothing, probably. The grief would still be there. Ellen would still be gone. But maybe he'd be slightly less tired. Maybe he'd have a real conversation or two with someone who understood loss. Maybe that was worth something. "Okay," he said. "A couple days." "Thank you," Lily smiled. "You're welcome. Now, it's late and I'm old and tired. Let's get some sleep. Morning comes early whether we're ready or not." They walked back through the dark street together, Lily carrying her candle, Samuel walking beside her. At the boarding house, they said goodnight, and he climbed back to his room. The bedroll looked more inviting now, or maybe he was just more tired. He lay down, pulled the blanket up, closed his eyes, and slept. Deep, dreamless sleep, the kind that comes after emotional exhaustion, after breaking and being witnessed and finding you're still alive on the other side. He woke to sunlight streaming through the window. Lay there, disoriented for a moment. Where was he? Then memory returned. Redemption. The empty town. Lily and whiskey and conversation. He sat up, stretched. His body still hurt, but his mind felt clearer. Lighter, somehow. As if crying in front of a stranger had released some pressure he hadn't known he was carrying. He stood, walked to the window. The town looked different in daylight, less ghostly, more just empty. Buildings showing their age and neglect, but also their bones, their structure. Still standing despite abandonment. Smoke was rising from the saloon's chimney. Lily was up, making breakfast probably. The smell of coffee, actual coffee, drifted on the morning air. Samuel's stomach growled. When was the last time he'd had a proper meal? Days ago, probably. He'd been surviving on trail rations, eating just enough to keep going. He went downstairs, found Ash in the stable, still content with the old hay. Gave him water, checked him over. The gelding looked good rested, healthy, probably enjoying the break as much as Samuel was. He walked over to the saloon, found Lily in the back room, cooking over a proper stove, eggs and bacon and what looked like biscuits. "Real food. Morning," she said. "Hope you're hungry." "I made too much, as usual. Habit from feeding crowds. I'm starving, actually." "Good. Sit. It's almost ready." They ate together at the same table from last night. The food was simple but delicious. The eggs were fresh, she kept chickens, she explained. The bacon was from a pig she'd slaughtered last fall. The biscuits were light and buttery. Samuel couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this good. "This is amazing," he said. "Practice. I've been cooking for 50 years. You get good at it eventually." After breakfast, Lily showed him around. The town was smaller than it seemed, maybe 20 buildings total. The church with the collapsed roof. The general store where she still kept some supplies. The old schoolhouse. Desks still in rows. Chalkboards still on the wall. The houses empty and silent. Belongings left behind by people who'd moved on. It was eerie, but also peaceful. A place frozen in time, slowly returning to earth. Want to help me with something? Lily asked. I've been meaning to clear some brush that's grown up around the well. Good to have a second pair of hands. Samuel agreed. It felt good to have a purpose, even a small one. They spent the morning working together, cutting back sage and tumbleweed that had accumulated. Simple physical labor, satisfying in its currentry, and as they worked, they talked, or sometimes didn't talk. Just worked side by side in companionable silence. Lily told him about Redemption's history. Founded in 1862 as a silver mining town, thrived for 20 years, declined as the silver played out. People thought the name was optimistic, she said. Redemption, like we could be saved from something. Turned out we were just another boom and bust town. Nothing special. You don't sound bitter. Why would I be? We had our time. It was good while it lasted. That's more than some places get. Samuel thought about that perspective. Accepting the cycle of rise and fall, not fighting against entropy, but recognizing it as natural. Maybe that was wisdom, or maybe just fatigue. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. By midday, they'd finished with the well. Lily made lunch sandwiches and lemonade. They sat on the saloon's porch, eating, watching heat waves shimmer over the distant desert. You thinking about staying longer? Lily asked. Maybe, if you don't mind. I'm delighted. Been years since I had company that could actually hold a conversation. The afternoon drifted by slowly. Samuel took a walk out of town, following an old trail up into the hills. Found himself at an overlook, looking back down at Redemption. From this distance it looked almost picturesque, tiny buildings clustered against red rock, smoke rising from one chimney, like a painting or a memory. He sat on a rock, letting the sun warm him. Thought about Ellen, about their life together, about everything he'd lost. But for the first time in months, the thinking didn't crush him, just hurt. Normal human hurt. Not the overwhelming, drowning hurt of acute grief. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe you didn't get over loss, you just learned to carry it. Made room for it in your life instead of letting it be your whole life. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals, hunting. Samuel watched it, envying its simplicity. The hawk didn't grieve, didn't regret, didn't wonder about meaning. Just lived, hunted, survived. Pure existence without the burden of consciousness. But consciousness was what made us human. The awareness of loss, of time, of mortality. You couldn't have one without the other. If you wanted to love, you had to accept that love could be lost. If you wanted to build, you had to accept that everything eventually fell. That was the deal. Ellen had known that. Had loved him anyway, fully, without holding back, despite knowing it would end. That took courage. More courage than he'd given her credit for at the time. He stayed on the overlook until the sun started, dropping toward the western horizon, then walked back down to town, arriving just as Lily was lighting lamps in the saloon. Good walk? She asked. Yeah, needed to think, and I think I'd like to stay a few more days. If that's still okay, more than okay. Stay as long as you need. That evening they had dinner together. Lily had made a stew that had been simmering all day, rich and hearty and perfect. They ate and talked and drank tea, no whiskey tonight. Lily said she had to pace herself. They talked about their lives before loss. Lily had been a schoolteacher before marrying George and opening the saloon. Samuel told her about the store, about his daughters, about the life he'd built and walked away from. You think you'll go back? She asked. To your daughters? Eventually, maybe. When I'm ready. When I can be there without bringing all this sadness with me. They'd probably accept your sadness. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for. Maybe, but I'm not ready yet. Lily nodded, didn't push. Just accepted where he was, without trying to move him somewhere else. It was dark when they finished. Samuel helped clean up, then walked back to the boarding house. The room felt less lonely now. Less like a place he was hiding, and more like a place he was resting. He lay on his bedroll, looking up at the ceiling. Thought about his promise to Ellen. Don't stop living when I'm gone. Was he living now? More than before, maybe. These past 2 days, with Lily actually talking, actually connecting, actually being present, instead of just moving, felt more like living than the previous 8 months had. Maybe that was progress. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but real. He thought about staying longer. Not forever, he wasn't ready to stop moving entirely. But maybe a week. Maybe 2. Give himself time to rest. Actually rest. Instead of just traveling with exhaustion. Lily wouldn't mind. Might even welcome it. And he had nowhere else to be. No schedule to keep. No obligations. Just time, stretching forward, empty and available. The thought was simultaneously freeing and terrifying. So much time. What was he supposed to do with it? Ellen's voice remembered. You'll figure it out. You always do. Maybe, or maybe he'd just stumble forward, making it up as he went, hoping something eventually made sense. That was okay too. Life didn't have to make sense to be worth living. He slept better that night. Still woke once or twice. Still had moments of sharp, missing pain. But overall, better. Healing, maybe, in small increments too tiny to measure, but real nonetheless. The days developed a rhythm. Wake at dawn, tend to ash. Have breakfast with Lily. Spend the morning doing small tasks around town, repairs to buildings, clearing brush, organizing the abandoned general store. Lunch together, then afternoons free to wander or read or just sit. Dinner, conversation, early to bed, simple routine. Nothing dramatic, but there was something healing in the simplicity. In the small acts of maintenance and care. Samuel fixed the church roof for part of it, anyway. Enough to keep rain from destroying what was left. Lily watched him work, handing up tools. Why bother? She asked. Nobody's using it, because it's still here. Still standing. Might as well keep it standing properly. She smiled. You're a good man, Samuel Chen. Just a man. But thank you. They worked together on the general store, sorting through inventory that had been left behind. Most of it was ruined fabric, rotted, food long spoiled, tools rusted. But some things were still good. They organized these, cleaned the shelves, made the space usable again. For what? Samuel asked. Does it need to be for something? Maybe just for itself. Maybe just because order is better than chaos. That made sense to Samuel. He'd spent his career organizing things, inventory, accounts, schedules. There was satisfaction in bringing order to disorder, even when the order served no immediate purpose. One afternoon, working in the old schoolhouse, Samuel found a child's primer ABC book, simple illustrations. He showed it to Lily. That was probably Mary Peterson's, she said. Tom's granddaughter. Sweet little girl. Her parents took her to Sacramento when they left. Must have forgotten this. Do you hear from any of them? Occasionally, a letter at Christmas. Sometimes, they remember their old teacher, send their regards. Makes me feel less forgotten. Samuel thought about his own daughters. He should write to them. Let them know he was okay, that he was thinking of them. Maybe tell them about this place, about Lily, about the small healing that was happening in this abandoned town. That evening he borrowed paper and a pen from Lily, sat at the saloon's bar, and wrote 3 letters, one to each daughter. Told them where he was, what he was doing, that he loved them and missed them but needed more time. Asked about their lives, their families, expressed regret for being absent. It felt good to write to them. Felt like reconnecting, even though it would be weeks before they received the letters. Weeks more before replies could reach him, if they could reach him at all, given his uncertain movements. But the act mattered more than the outcome. He'd made an effort. That was something days past. Samuel lost count. 7 didn't matter. Time had become fluid, measured not in hours, but in tasks completed. Conversations had, small satisfactions accumulated. He was sleeping better, eating better, smiling occasionally when Lily said something dry and funny. Not happy, exactly, but not drowning either. Treading water. Staying afloat one evening, sitting on the saloon's porch watching the sunset, Lily said, "You know you could stay. Properly stay. Help me keep this place going." Samuel considered it. "You mean live here? In redemption? Why not? You're not doing anything else. You're clearly good with your hands, good company. We could be partners. Keep the town from completely falling apart. But why? What's the point? Does there need to be a point? Maybe the point is just doing it, caring for something, having a purpose, even a small one." Samuel thought about it. Staying here, in this ghost town, with this sharp old woman, making it his home, his new life. It had a certain appeal, simplicity, purpose, escape from the wider world and its demands. But something in him resisted. Not ready yet for permanence, for commitment to a place. Still needed motion, needed the option to leave. "I appreciate the offer," he said finally, "but I'm not ready to stop moving yet. Ask me again in a year." Lily nodded, unsurprised. "Fair enough. The offer stands." That night, Samuel dreamed of Ellen again. They were walking together through Redemption's empty streets. She was looking at everything with interest, asking questions about the buildings, the history. "Lily, I like her," Ellen said. "She reminds me of myself, stubborn, practical, refusing to give up even when giving up would be easier. She's been good for me, helping me, I know. I'm glad." She took his hand. "But Samuel, you can't hide here forever. This isn't your home. It's a way station, a place to rest and heal. But eventually you'll need to move on, move toward something, not just away from grief. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've always known how to move forward. You're just scared. That's okay. Being scared is okay. But don't let it stop you forever. I miss you so much. I know. I miss you too. But missing me can't be your whole life. Promise me, Samuel. Really promise this time. You'll find a way forward, I promise." She kissed him, and he felt it tactually, felt it, warm and real. Then she faded, and he was alone in the empty street. And he woke up with tears on his face, but also, strangely, Hope. Samuel stayed 2 more weeks. Helped Lily with projects around town, had long conversations over meals, read books from the abandoned library. Let himself rest, really rest, for the first time in months. But Ellen was right, this wasn't his home. Couldn't be. It was a way station, a healing place, but not a destination. On his last morning, he packed his few belongings, saddled Ash, went to say goodbye to Lily, found her in the saloon, making breakfast as usual. "So," she said, "today's the day." "Yeah, time to move on." "Where to?" "North, I think. Maybe Montana. Maybe just wherever the trail leads." She nodded. "I'll miss you. Been nice having company." "I'll miss you too. Thank you, Lily, for everything. For letting me rest here. For the conversations. For understanding. You're welcome. Right when you can. Let me know you're okay." "I will." They hugged, brief, awkward, real. Then Samuel mounted Ash, touched his hat brim in farewell, rode out of redemption. At the edge of town he stopped, looked back. Lily was standing on the saloon porch, watching. He raised a hand. She raised hers. Then he turned Ash north and rode on. The trail led through familiar red rock country, climbing gradually into pine forest. The morning was cool. The air smelled of sage and juniper. Ash walked with energy, clearly happy to be moving again. Samuel felt okay. Not healed, that would take longer, maybe forever. But better. More whole, like pieces of himself that had shattered were slowly knitting back together. He thought about Ellen's dream words. Move toward something, not just away from grief. What was he moving toward? He didn't know yet. But he was open to finding out. That was progress. Maybe he'd go see his daughters. Not yet, but soon. Let them know he was alive, trying, finding his way back. They deserved that. He deserved that connection. Or maybe he'd find another small town that needed someone with his skills. Open a store again, or work for someone else. Use his hands, his mind, his experience. Build something, even something small. Or maybe he'd just keep wandering for a while longer. There was no rush. He had time. Not endless time, he was 63, not 23, but enough time. Enough to figure out what came next. The trail climbed higher. The pine forest thickened. Ash's hooves were nearly silent on the soft forest floor. A creek ran alongside the trail, making its small, continuous song. Samuel breathed deeply, pulling that clean pine air into his lungs. Felt alive, present, grateful. He thought about Lily, alone again in redemption. Hoped she was okay. Hoped their time together had meant something to her too. Hoped she wouldn't be alone forever, that other travelers would find their way there. Need rest, give her purpose and company. But even if they didn't, she'd be okay. She was strong, stubborn, had made peace with her solitude. Had chosen it, in a way. That made it bearable. Samuel hadn't chosen his solitude, had been forced on him by death. But maybe he was choosing what to do with it now. Choosing to keep moving, keep living, keep being open to what came next. That was something. That was enough. The morning aged into afternoon. The trail descended back into desert, the pine forest giving way to juniper and sage. The sun warmed his back. Ash walked steadily, covering miles. Samuel didn't know where he'd sleep tonight. Didn't know where he'd be tomorrow, next week, next month. But that was okay. The not knowing was okay. even welcome, in a way. Ellen had always said he needed to loosen up, stop planning everything, let life surprise him. Maybe this was him finally learning that lesson, taking her wisdom, carrying it forward, living, not just existing, moving toward something, even if that something was still undefined. Current length, 50,107 characters. As the sun dropped toward the horizon, Samuel found a good spot to camp, a flat area near a spring, sheltered by rock walls. He unsaddled Ash, set up his bedroll, built a small fire, ate jerky and dried apples, drank spring water that tasted of stone and thyme. The sunset was spectacular, orange and gold and purple, the whole sky ablaze. Ellen's kind of sunset, never the same twice. He watched until the colors faded, until stars began to emerge. Sat by the fire, feeling its warmth, watching flames dance. He thought about his life, past, present, future. All the joy and grief and ordinary days that added up to existence. All the people he'd loved, lost, known briefly and forgotten. All the places he'd been, the roads he'd traveled, the countless small decisions that had led him here, to this moment, this fire, this quiet evening in the desert. It had been a good life. Not perfect, no life was perfect, but good, rich with love, with work, with meaning. Ellen's death hadn't erased that, just changed it, added a new chapter, one written in absence and grief and slowly, slowly healing. He poked the fire, added another stick. Sparks rose into the darkness, tiny stars ascending to join the real stars above. This was enough. This moment, this peace, this simple being alive. Tomorrow he'd ride on, find new places, meet new people, continue his journey toward whatever came next. But tonight, just this, just now, just sitting by a fire under stars, breathing, existing, carrying his love and his loss forward into another day, grateful, present, alive. The fire burned lower. Samuel added wood occasionally, keeping it going but not large, just enough for warmth and light. Ash was dozing nearby, comfortable and safe. Samuel lay back on his bedroll, head pillowed on his saddle, looking up at the stars. So many of them, countless, each one a sun, burning across distances he couldn't comprehend, sending light that took years to reach his eyes. Some of those stars were probably dead already, gone dark, collapsed, ended. But their light was still traveling, would reach Earth long after the source had extinguished. Ghosts of stars, still shining, like Ellen. Gone, but still present in his memories. His thoughts, the way she'd shaped him. Her light still traveling through him, illuminating his path even in her absence. That was beautiful in a sad way. Nothing was ever truly gone as long as someone remembered, as long as the light kept traveling. He thought about his parents, his childhood in Sacramento, the tiny apartment above the laundry, always warm and damp from the washing downstairs. His mother's hands, rough from work but gentle when she touched his face. His father's rare smile, brief but genuine, usually reserved for moments when Samuel did something that made him proud. They'd sacrificed so much for him, left everything, familiar, family, language, homeland, to build something new in a strange land. Had worked themselves to exhaustion so he could have opportunities they'd never had. And what had he done with those opportunities? Built a good life, yes. Raised good daughters. Made Ellen happy. But then, when Ellen died, he'd walked away from all of it. abandoned the life they'd built, the community they'd been part of. Just left. Would his parents be disappointed? Proud, understanding? He'd never know. They were gone, Ellen was gone, and he was left trying to make sense of it all alone. But maybe that was okay. Maybe you didn't need permission or approval to grieve in your own way. Maybe the only person who needed to understand was yourself. The fire crackled. A log split, sending up a shower of sparks. Samuel watched them rise and fade, temporary beauty in the darkness. He thought about Lily, back in Redemption. Alone again, but not lonely. There was a difference. She'd chosen her solitude, had made peace with it, had found meaning in maintaining her empty town, in keeping standards even when no one was watching. Maybe that was the secret. Not avoiding solitude, but finding meaning in it, making it active rather than passive, choosing what to do with the emptiness instead of just enduring it. Samuel had been enduring, moving through days without purpose, without direction. But these last weeks with Lily had shown him something different. The possibility of choosing, of actively engaging with life instead of just surviving it. He sat up, added more wood to the fire. The flames grew, pushing back the darkness. Light and warmth radiating outward, creating a small sphere of comfort in the vast night. Ellen had been his light for 38 years, had illuminated everything, made the world brighter just by being in it. When she died, the darkness had felt absolute, crushing, but slowly, gradually, other lights were appearing. His daughters, still there, still loving him despite his absence. Lily, offering unexpected friendship in an unexpected place. Even this fire, right now, pushing back darkness in its small, determined way. Maybe healing wasn't about finding one big light to replace what you'd lost. Maybe it was about noticing the small lights that were already there, tending them, letting them matter. A owl called from somewhere in the rocks. Another answered. Their voices carried across the desert, mysterious and wild. Creatures of the night, comfortable in darkness, needing no light but their own vision. Samuel envied them, in a way, their instinctual existence, their lack of self. But he was human, cursed with consciousness, blessed with memory, had to figure out how to carry both the light and the darkness, the joy and the grief, the past and the uncertain future. It was hard work, this being human, but also sometimes beautiful. The night deepened, the temperature dropped. Samuel pulled his blanket up, lay back down, closed his eyes, opened them, watched stars wheel slowly across the sky. He thought about tomorrow. Where would he go? North still felt right. Montana, maybe. Big sky country, room to breathe. Maybe find work on a ranch, spend a season or two somewhere before moving on. Or maybe head toward one of his daughters. Maybe it was time. Maybe he was ready to be part of a family again, even if his presence carried grief with it. He'd decide in the morning, or the day after, or whenever it felt right. No rush, no pressure, just forward motion, one day at a time. The fire burned down to coals. The darkness pressed closer. Samuel let his eyes close. Let sleep begin to pull him under. His last thought before sleeping was of Ellen, not the dying Ellen, wasted by illness, but the young Ellen, 25 years old, laughing at something he'd said, her hand in his, her eyes bright with love and mischief and all the future they'd thought they had. I'm trying, he whispered to her memory. I'm trying to live, like I promised. It's hard, but I'm trying. And maybe, in the darkness behind his closed eyes, he felt her presence. Just for a moment. Just a whisper of what had been, saying, I know, I'm proud of you. Keep going, then sleep, deep and dreamless and peaceful. Samuel woke to birdsong. The eastern sky was grey-blue, dawn approaching but not yet arrived. The fire had died to ash. Ash, the horse, was awake, standing alert, ears forward toward some sound or movement Samuel couldn't perceive. He lay there a moment, not quite ready to leave the warmth of his blanket, breathing the cold morning air, watching the sky lighten degree by imperceptible degree. This was his favorite time, the threshold between night and day, when the world was quiet and new and full of possibility, before the day's heat and noise and demands. Just this peaceful transition. He thought about redemption, about Lily making coffee right now in her empty saloon, wondered if she was thinking about him, wondering where he'd slept, hoping he was okay. Maybe he'd write to her from the next town, let her know. The sky paled further. Pink began to spread from the east. The stars faded. Brightest ones last Venus, hanging on until the final moment before surrendering to day. Samuel sat up, shook off the blanket. The morning cold hit him immediately. He pulled on his jacket, stood, stretched. His back protested too many nights on hard ground. But the pain was familiar, almost comforting. Proof he was alive, still moving. He rolled his bedroll, packed his gear, saddled Ash. The horse stood patiently, accepting the routine. Good horse. Faithful companion through all this wandering. The sun rose, first a glow, then a sliver, then the full disk. Gold light spilled across the desert, bringing warmth and color and the promise of another day. Samuel mounted, sat for a moment, looking at the landscape before him. Miles of open country, broken by distant mesas and mountains. Beautiful and harsh and indifferent. The land that had shaped the West, shaped the people who tried to live in it. He thought about all the others who'd ridden through this country before him. Cowboys and outlaws, settlers and soldiers, people seeking fortune or freedom or just escape. Some had found what they sought. Most hadn't. But all had contributed something, their labor, their hope. Their bones eventually returned to dust. He was part of that continuum. Just another traveler passing through, leaving no lasting mark, but participating in the endless human story of movement and seeking and trying to make sense of existence. That was okay. He didn't need to leave a mark. Just needed to keep going, keep living, keep honoring Ellen's memory by not surrendering to grief. He nudged Ash forward. The gelding walked willingly, eager for the day. The trail led north, through sage and juniper, toward distant mountains still topped with snow. Samuel breathed deeply, pulling morning air into his lungs, tasting dust and sage and possibility. He didn't know where this path led, didn't know what tomorrow held, or next week, or next year, but he was okay with that. The not knowing was part of it, part of being alive and human and willing to keep moving forward. The morning warmed. The sun climbed higher. Ash's shadow shortened from beside them to beneath them. Time passing, as it always did. Whether you noticed or not, Samuel thought about time. How it moved so slowly in the moment, but so fast in retrospect. How 38 years with Ellen had felt eternal while they were happening, but now seemed impossibly brief. How these 8 months of wandering had felt endless some days, but would probably seem like nothing when he looked back on them years from now. We live forward but understand backward, someone had said once. Couldn't remember who, but it was true. You couldn't see the pattern of your life while you were living it. Only later, looking back, could you see how things connected, how choices led to consequences, how everything somehow fit together into a story. His story was still being written, still unfolding. The grief chapter, the wandering chapter, this slow healing chapter. Who knew what came next? He didn't, but he was willing to find out. The trail climbed gradually, leading into foothills. The vegetation changed, more pine, less sage. The air cooled slightly, became fresher. Ash's breathing deepened, but she kept her steady pace, reliable as always. Samuel passed an old cabin, abandoned years ago by the look of it. Roof collapsed, walls leaning. Someone's home once, someone's dreams and labor, now just slowly returning to the land that had provided the materials. Everything was temporary. Buildings, towns, lives. All of it impermanent. But that didn't make it meaningless. Just made it precious. Made the time you had matter more. By midday he reached a small creek, decided to stop for lunch. Dismounted, let Ash drink and graze. Ate hardtack and dried beef. Drank cold creek water that tasted of snow and stone. Sat on a rock, listening to the creek's small music, thinking about nothing in particular. Just being present to this moment, this place, this quiet solitude. A deer appeared on the opposite bank, young doe, cautious but curious. She looked at him, he looked at her. Neither moved. Just mutual observation. Two living things sharing space peacefully. Then she startled at something, maybe Ash shifting position, and bounded away, white tail flashing, gone as quickly as she'd appeared. Samuel smiled. Small moments of connection with the wild. Reminders that he was part of something larger than himself, than his grief, than his small human concerns. The afternoon aged into evening. Samuel found another good camping spot, flat ground near water, sheltered by trees. Made camp efficiently, built a fire, prepared his simple dinner, sat watching the fire as darkness fell, as stars emerged one by one. The familiar ritual, comforting in its repetition. He thought about Ellen again. Always Ellen, never far from his thoughts. But the thinking was gentler now. Less like a wound being probed and more like a memory being honored. He could see her clearly in his mind, not the sick version, but the vibrant version. Her smile, her laugh, the way she'd look at him with such love and understanding. The way she'd made even ordinary moments feel special just by being present to them. She'd taught him that. How to be present. How to notice beauty. How to love fully without holding back. He'd learned slowly, had been a practical man, focused on business and responsibility. But she'd been patient. Had shown him again and again until he finally understood. And now she was gone, but the lessons remained. Still teaching him, still shaping him, still helping him become better than he would have been without her. That was love's legacy. Not just the time together, but the person you became through loving them. The ways they changed you that stayed even after they left. Ellen had made him better, kinder, more aware, more alive. And that hadn't died with her. Couldn't die as long as he honored it, carried it forward. Tried to live the way she'd taught him to live. The fire burned lower. Samuel added wood, watched new flames rise. Thought about his future, near and far. Tomorrow he'd keep riding north. Maybe the day after he'd reach a town, resupply, ask about work. Or maybe he'd just keep going, following the trail wherever it led. Eventually dash, soon. Maybe he'd write to his daughters again. Tell them he was ready to see them. Ask if he could visit. Be part of their lives again. Be the grandfather their children needed. That felt right. Felt like the next step. Not abandoning his grief. Couldn't abandon grief. It came with you, but making room for other things too. Connection, purpose, love. Ellen would approve. Would say it was about time. Would hug him and tell him she was proud. He could almost feel it, that hug. Could almost smell her hair. Feel her arms around him. Almost hurt. But it was a bearable hurt. Human hurt. The kind that meant you'd loved deeply and lost greatly and were somehow still here. Still breathing, still moving forward. The fire crackled. A coyote called. Ash shifted position. Small sounds of the night, familiar and comforting. Samuel lay down on his bedroll, pulled his blanket up, looked at stars through tree branches, thought about all the people sleeping under these same stars, tonight alone or together, happy or grieving, moving or still, all of them part of the same human story, all trying to make sense of existence, find meaning, survive loss, celebrate joy, all temporary, all precious, all connected by the simple fact of being alive at this moment in time. He closed his eyes. Sleep was coming. He could feel it. That gentle pull downward into rest and dreams and whatever the night would bring. His last conscious thought was simple. Tomorrow. I'll try again tomorrow. Keep moving, keep living, keep honoring Ellen's memory by being fully alive. That was enough. That was everything sleep took him, gentle and complete, and in the darkness, under stars that had witnessed countless human struggles and joys and sorrows, Samuel Chen slept peacefully, grieving still, yes, but healing too. Slowly, imperceptibly, but really, moving forward, toward something, toward life. The fire burned down to coals. The stars wheeled. The night deepened and then, eventually, began to pale. And when dawn came again, as it always did, Samuel would wake, would pack his gear, saddle his horse, ride on, would face another day with whatever courage he could muster, would keep Ellen's light burning in his heart, in his memory, in the way he tried to live, would keep going, keep trying, keep being present to the beauty and pain and strange gift of existence, would honor his promise to her, to really live, not just exist, one day at a time, one breath at a time, one morning at a time, forward into whatever came next, with gratitude, with grief, with hope, with love that death couldn't kill, couldn't diminish, couldn't end alive. 3 weeks later, in a small town in Montana, Samuel sat at a desk in a boarding house, writing. The room was simple but clean. The window looked out on a main street that was actually alive with people and commerce. Normal life, ongoing, indifferent to his grief. He'd found work at a general store, was staying here temporarily while he figured out his next move. The owner was a good man, reminded him of some of the suppliers he'd worked with in Sacramento. They'd talked, shared stories, found common ground, but tonight Samuel wasn't thinking about work, was thinking about his daughters, about connection, about moving toward instead of away from. He'd received a letter yesterday from Mary, somehow miraculously tracked to this town. She'd written, "Father, we miss you. We understand you need time, need space. But please know you're always welcome, always wanted. Whenever you're ready, we're here. Come home or come visit. Just come back to us somehow. Samuel had read it 3 times, felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. His daughters, still loving him, still waiting. He picked up his pen, began to write. Dear Mary, Sarah, and Rebecca, I'm ready. Not completely healed, I don't think anyone heals completely from losing their great love, but ready enough, ready to be your father again, to be a grandfather to your children, to be part of a family. I'll be there in 2 weeks. I have some things to finish here first, then I'll come. To San Francisco first, to see you, Mary. Then we'll figure out the rest. I love you all. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for not giving up on me. Your father, Samuel. He folded the letter, sealed it, addressed it. Would mail it tomorrow. Would keep his promise. Would move forward. Outside his window, the street was quieting as evening came. People heading home to their families, their lives, their ordinary joys and sorrows. Samuel watched them, feeling connected rather than separate. Part of humanity again, rather than apart from it. Ellen would be proud. Was proud wherever she was. He could feel it, like a blessing, like permission to keep living. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the mountains visible in the distance. Beautiful country. He'd miss it, but other beautiful places waited, and more importantly, people who loved him waited. That mattered more than any landscape, however beautiful. He thought about Lily, alone in redemption. Should write to her too. Tell her he'd taken her advice, was moving towards something. Thank her again for the gift of rest, of understanding, of showing him that healing was possible. Tomorrow, he'd write, tomorrow, tonight. He'd sit here in this simple room and feel grateful. For his daughters, for Ellen's love that still sustained him, for Lily's friendship, for all the small kindnesses and connections that had helped him find his way, through grief, towards something like hope for being alive. Still here, still capable of love and loss and the whole complicated, beautiful, painful business of existence. That was enough. That was everything. The sun set. Stars emerged. Another day ended, another beginning. Samuel closed his curtains, lay on his bed, and for the first time in 5 years, looked forward to tomorrow.